All right, broadcast has started. We're going to let the system catch up and folks log on, and then we'll just give it just a couple moments here.
Oh, I shouldn't do that, should I? I gotta leave my screen up. I can't fiddle around with everything.
All right, folks, welcome to CLF's Grassroots Advancement Program webinar, what we learned during the pandemic with our friends at Get Outdoors Nevada. My name's Andres Esparza, and I am here at our office in Durango, Colorado, welcoming you all and thanking you for joining us here on this afternoon. Before we get into the details and the information here, again, just want to start every webinar like we've been starting all of our other meetings recently. Again, acknowledging and thanking everybody who took the time to register for and is either attending this webinar right now or registered for and will be reading the follow-up and listening to the follow-up after this. We 100% recognize that these are difficult times and there is a lot going on. And if you're unable to access this recording and watch it for another couple weeks because you have stuff going on, that's totally okay. If you have to step away from work for a tiny bit to deal with personal issues, we get that. Our hope in continuing these offerings and continuing the learning throughout this time is to make sure that we remain strong as a conservation community and make sure that when we come out on the other end, we are just as strong, if not stronger than before. So again, thank you for making time. We appreciate it. Here at CLF, we're always happy to support our network. Just let us know how. This webinar put on by Get Outdoors Nevada, what we learned during the pandemic, I think is applicable to everybody, and I think everybody has their own version of the story. Almendra and Aaron in a moment are gonna share with us their journey of when this pandemic hit, when we found ourselves in a new reality. What were the obstacles we were encountering, sometimes for the first time? What sort of, maybe not shortcomings, but weaknesses in our systems did they expose? And how did we as organizations focused on land conservation and connecting people with their landscapes? How did we as organizations continue to do our work? How did we have to pivot? How did we move into a digital realm, rethink our mission, and make sure that we come out with an even more connected community? You know, a lot of this is very much, how do we launch Zoom webinars? How do we do online hikes? These are just two of the many ways that we are all focusing on how to remain engaged with our communities. And at the same time realizing, and then I'll turn it over to them, that a lot of the ways we have traditionally reached out to and connected with communities has either intentionally or more often than not unintentionally left out large segments of the population. And I think looking at this pandemic and our digital outreach as a way to think about how can we be the most inclusive movement possible, I think we're gonna come out of this pandemic with a lot of tools and a lot of new experiences that are going to allow us to connect all the communities we can to these important landscapes. So I'm going to be sitting in the background in just a moment. And what I'd like is to turn it over to Almendra and Aaron in just one more moment, but real quick, want to go over some quick logistics here. If you all take a moment and take your cursor and drag it to the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a bar that has some options. There's a Q&A box where if you have any questions that you need answered, please type them in there and I'll be managing the questions in the background. There's a chat box as well where I just typed hello to everybody. Mm-hmm. If you have any chat related stuff you need to let people know about, go ahead and type it there and we can keep in touch with each other either privately or to everybody. Make sure you know who it's going to. And finally, there's a raise your hand function. If you need to speak up, if you need to clarify a question a little bit more, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, I would love to turn it over to Almendra and Aaron, and I'm going to sit back and I'll come on towards the tail end and in between to bring up any questions that folks have for us. Otherwise, it's all you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Aaron Leifheit. I'm on the left there. I'm happy to be an education program director for Get Outdoors Nevada. And that's a picture of myself that I just took on a recent trip to Wyoming on a camping trip from just a couple weeks ago. And I'm here with Almendra also. She wants to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Almendra Johnson. I am a volunteer program director with Get Outdoors Nevada. I've been with Get Outdoors Nevada for 2 years now, and I'm focused on the volunteer program, but also like to dabble in the education programs here locally in Las Vegas. That's a picture of me in our local spring mountains. I did not grow up with snow, so every time I see snow, even though I'm not a kid anymore, I still act like a kid in the snow. So that's me playing in the snow in the spring mountains. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we ready to get started? Are we jumping in? All right, here we go. So a little background on Get Outdoors Nevada. Get Outdoors Nevada, our mission is to connect people to their outside spaces. And we do this focusing on 3 major areas. We teach about the Mojave Desert to create environmental literacy and to foster stewardship of the outdoors. We engage with the community at volunteer events. We invite them to join us in helping care for our local parks and trails and public lands. And then we also believe that it's really critical that we work with our partners and that together we increase awareness of the outdoors. And so some of our partners may be the destinations where we take our groups and go on field trips, and our partners may also be the students or the groups that come out to volunteer with us. 2019 was pretty awesome for Get Outdoors Nevada. The volunteer program hosted 122 volunteer events. We were just shy of 4,000 volunteers, and together they contributed over 10,000 hours of service to our local parks, trails, and public land areas. So 2019 was pretty awesome, and we started off 2020, January, February, awesome numbers for volunteers coming out. Had a great 2020 start.
Almendra has an awesome program. She's a wonderful employee to work with. We also have an awesome education team. And before I get into the education stuff, Almendra, I think my screen share might have changed a little bit. Can you see just the presentation, or can you see more than the presentation?
I can see your toolbar at the top, but mostly it's just the presentation.
Okay, I might stop the share and then try to do it again just to make sure that it is accurate. Okay, I don't know what happened when I can't have it go to the full.
I mean, it looks pretty close to full. I think, I'm not seeing anything.
Go with it from there then, I guess, although I don't like that. So I'm proud to work in the education department at Get Outdoors Nevada, although over the past 4 months, a lot of what we've done has combined together. And last year was the biggest year that we've ever had for the education department. We did 606 education programs. Almendra helped out with a lot of those programs. We were really proud of that because that was the highest number that we've ever offered. And we also have a micro grant program where we provide buses to schools and other underserved groups that can't get out to different places on their own. And we paid for 96 buses for schools last year, which we were particularly proud of. When we've done in-person programs, we've been really conscious about who those programs reach. And 83% of our programs are for underserved youth, and that's as defined by the school district. So to get us into, what happened with, the pandemic and things, we're going to start out with just a little bit of our journey. And so like most of the rest of you, our things were just going along normally, and we were hearing things in the news that were happening, and a lot of it hadn't really hit home to us yet, but when it did hit home, it hit home very quickly. So I think that I had a field trip scheduled for the 14th, Saturday, the day after everything kind of stopped in Las Vegas. And it was maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and we still weren't sure if the program was going to happen or not. So Volunteer events were canceled, schools were closed, field trips were postponed, and everything came to a stop relatively quickly. There was a lot of unknowns that we had. And so today what we're going to talk about is how we navigated some of those unknowns, some of the lessons that we learned along the way, and some of the things that we are going to take with us and take with our organization as we move into the future. So to start with, in the beginning, this was really like important for me, and I would encourage everyone else to be aware of this too, that we acknowledge that like this is a really unusual, strange time. We acknowledge that everything was difficult. We acknowledge that it's okay not to know what to do with your organization. We had a lot of conversations with different people where we tried to figure out what was going on. And throughout all of that, we tried to be kind to ourselves and kind to everybody else, and realize that nobody really knows what to do now. We may make a lot of mistakes. If you make a mistake and you try something and it doesn't work out, that's okay. If you try something and it gets frustrating and you don't know where to turn for guidance, that's okay too. So I would encourage everyone to keep that in mind as they're going through their own organization. You may be making decisions, you don't know the answers to those decisions, and that's okay. You don't have to be good at everything. You don't have to know everything now. But what we decided to do rather quickly was what we call pivot and kind of lean into what was our new reality. My personal urge was to just kind of like keep my head down and keep doing everything the way that I had done it, and then hope that like maybe in a few weeks things will go back to normal. But I think we were really conscious as an organization to not do that, and to decide that we were just going to turn quickly and just face whatever was happening head on, and try to get the most out of whatever was happening. And a big part of doing that was to look on this as an opportunity, and look on this as something to grow from. So I know Mauricia is here. I had some conversations with Mauricia about this, and everyone else. Instead of being frustrated with this or thinking about this is going to stop everything we're doing, we tried to think, what can we do now that we would not do in a normal day-to-day situation? What projects could we work on that we wouldn't work on in other times? What things can we pursue that we wouldn't work on in other times? And to really have the mindset that this is an opportunity for us to grow in new areas. And Elmendra had a really good example of that she's going to talk about in this slide.
Yeah, so like Aaron said, we really, in the very beginning, decided to jump in and to do something. And as an opportunity to grow, we looked also at what we already had and what we could already use. And that meant reimagining some of the themes that we were already talking about with our in-person programs. So for our volunteer program, we were already offering trail guidance to our volunteers. And so we kind of tweaked with that a little bit and created some graphics for social media where we could continue with that theme and continue with that that guidance. We were already giving tortoise talks to in classroom students, and so we kind of used those programs to make videos and provide that online. So we really retooled some of the themes we already had and started with that so that we could ease into some of those transitions. We were already talking about, nature being, everyone's always talking about nature as being good for your mental health. And it was really exciting to see Aaron come up with that idea to do a Mindfulness Monday video. And so that was another retooling and another reimagining of some of those themes that we shared online. And then the graphic you'll see, the Nevada Nature Project, was kind of also that the idea that we have time right now for different things. What are these different things? And We, in the summer, usually support the summer camp kiddos that are at the local community centers. And with those programs shifting and changing in the summer, we started exploring ways that we could still offer our programs to them in a different way. So a lot of discussions about doing things differently and kind of retooling to still meet our mission.
Thanks, Elmendra. And this is my colleague Donovan on the screen here. Donovan and I both in our personal lives are rather more on the shy side. So, we're not the type of people that would say like, we're going to make a video of ourselves and put it all over the internet and we're going to do it every week, and so I'm really proud of Donovan and want to shout him out because he's been making online videos for, perhaps the last 3 or 4 months. And that was a big opportunity for him to grow because that was something that he would have never done before, but now that we've had this opportunity, he's really embraced that. The next thing we did, and all these decisions kind of just happened in a week or so, is that we decided as an organization, what space do we want to live in? What space do we want to occupy in this new reality? And so we decided as an organization that Get Outdoors Nevada wanted to occupy like a positive space. So lots of things are stressful. The news is stressful. People are spending more time on social media. A lot of things that they are seeing are maybe traumatic things. And so we wanted people to, be seeing all that stuff, but then when they saw our content, it would be kind of like an antidote to that. So then they would associate us with feeling good. And by contrast, they would associate nature with feeling good. And we also wanted to focus on content and materials that people could use in their day-to-day lives. So for instance, on the left here, we have a little picture of our Beat the Heat, which was part of our backyard camping program. So everybody can do a backyard camping program. They could do it in their garage or in their living room if they wanted to. And then our coworker, Roslyn, did this little graphic in the middle where she showed how to use cactus to make napales. That's something that anybody else could, anybody can do that in their backyard. And then I started doing a mindfulness course and program and lessons every Monday that Elmendra mentioned. And to me, that was like, what can I do in my life, through this organization to help people stay positive and calm and, tie back to what we are focusing on, which nature is really good for people's mental health. So those are all decisions that we made kind of right off the bat. What we're going to move into next is some lessons and skills that we learned along the way, but I think, Andres, this might be a good time to check in with some of the people on the call because I think that everybody went through a similar, kind of learning curve as they encountered everything that was going on. I think it'd be kind of interesting to hear from some other people of what they went through. If you want to maybe see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for that. Yeah, it would be great if somebody were able to either raise your hand and I'll see it or type in the chat box. But we'd love to hear kind of what were the ways that you were directly impacted, because I think what Aaron and Elmendra were getting at is that we all had this very successful model that we were following, and there was a huge shock to our system, and we had to adapt. But what did that shock look like to all of us? Because I think we all operate in slightly different spaces, and it's going to feel different. From Neek over in Grand Staircase, it was definitely a lesson for us, was that virtual content takes much more time to produce than preparing for an in-person program on the same topic. And I think our friends at Get Outdoors Nevada will probably get into that a little bit more, but that is absolutely true. And have it nailed and can do it in my sleep. But if I have to do it virtually, it's not an easy task. And I have to think about my audience and how it's going to be delivered and what the graphics are going to look like. And it's not an easy transition, but, and again, maybe something that we'll get to as well in this is coming out of this, we now realize that there are a lot of ways to share the things that we do well. And if we can begin to produce our content in ways that are both in person and virtual, we're going to expand our reach of all of our programming. But it's not easy, and it's never the same. And it's going to take a little more time on the front end. But yeah, thanks for that. Diane said, our in-person educational presentations and hikes were great ways to keep members engaged and gain new members. We are needing to find new ways to keep members engaged and invite in new members now. Again, I think Get Outdoors Nevada is going to specifically talk about numbers and how their membership, or at least their social media contacts, actually grew during this time. And without stealing too much of what they're going to share, I would just emphasize that try to frame it as you are now being asked to reach out to a much broader community, and use that opportunity to really think about what are all the ways that other people can be brought in. The way I like to think about it is, if you have members, if you have people on an email list, they're already your captive audience. You just have to check in with them, but use this opportunity to reach out to a broader audience. And I think Get Outdoors Nevada is going to speak a little bit more to that. I don't know if there's any more folks who have a comment or suggestion. Otherwise, we can probably just move on here.
Carry on.
Carry on.
So the first section is kind of, that all that happened kind of in a week or two. And then, we've been attempting to do this kind of new version of our programming for a couple months. And so we want to share some things that we have learned along the way. And then that may speak to some of your questions. So the first thing that we learned along the way was to be organized and to keep a schedule for everything. So you can see here that there's a copy of like a Excel spreadsheet that we keep. And so what we do is, for all the different campaigns that we've started, whether they're intensive or not intensive, we put on there when we're going to post, who's going to post, what the content and the topic of the post is going to be. And then that helps everybody in the organization to stay on the same page with our weekly schedule. It personally helps me because, like, I'm not much of a morning person, for instance. And so, having on there that, well, you're going to do something right away in the morning on Mondays, buddy, really helps me, because that kind of helps me hold myself accountable, and it keeps everybody on the team involved. After the webinar, we'll send out some information and some resources to everybody that's on the call, and part of this spreadsheet will be in those resources if you want to use that to help keep track of your own social media efforts. Elmendra also created, and her team created, a virtual program schedule. And so every week she would take what was in this Excel spreadsheet, and then she would send it out to everybody on the internet. So if you're in our community, you would know what was coming for the upcoming week. So just having that organization really helped, because it got everybody on the same page. We didn't really try to control what people were doing. Instead, we let people do what they had an interest in. So I, in my personal life, am interested in meditation and mindfulness. That's something that I've never, ever combined with like my work efforts, but it's like, well, that's a personal interest of mine. We can't do the things that we're doing now. So like, let's just go with it and see what happens.
Yeah, so just kind of, also wanted to mention that Get Outdoors Nevada was not really using social media in that way prior to this. Our social media had been used for announcements or to share some volunteer photographs after an event, but we really didn't have like a content schedule that we were promoting or releasing every week. So that schedule also helped our audience pivot with us and kind of see that, oh, we're really doing something different, and come with us. And I think that that was like an invitation every week to have them stick with us and see what we were doing. So along with the lessons and skills that we learned, how did we do this? How did we take that schedule and start creating content? And a couple years ago, Get Outdoors Nevada rebranded. So we did actually pay for a professional design of a logo, brand colors, and fonts. And that did give us a leg up in this situation, that we did have those things in place. However, we did rely we did rely on a moderately priced tool called Canva that some of you may be familiar with. I know that CLF had been sharing some Canva login information on the Slack, but we encourage you to check it out. For us, Canva really was the next step in organizing our content and creating our content. It was a place where we could house all of our colors and our graphics, and we could also share ideas. So if one week Erin created a template for something, we could build off of that for following weeks. We could see and get inspired by some of the other content creators in our team. We're a small team of 11, and to come up with everything was kind of overwhelming. None of us were really graphics experts, so using Canva allowed us to see some professional templates and graphics and get ideas and play around with the designs. And like we mentioned before, we were retooling our messages for presentation online, whereas even Andreas alluded to that you could just talk to someone and give your program verbally, and now we actually had to put it on a graphic, put it on paper. And so Canva was that tool for us, and you can see some examples of different guidance. The colors are similar. One thing that came out of this is that our graphics, our content was received very well from the audience. It looked professional. It looked connected, well curated, even though there were some weeks we felt like we were just flying, not even knowing, but it looked really good, right? It looked good. So Canva helped us with that professional work. It also was really neat to see that more professional organizations too, like corporations, were using our materials to share with their employees during this time. As everyone started going outside and hiking, we were one of the first in our community to share trail guidance on how to spend time outdoors safely. And so we started seeing our graphics being shared through different corporate email chains, newsletters, and I think that was all because of the professional look that we had used in Canva. Also, some of us were not morning people, like Erin mentioned too, but the tools for scheduling were something that we really were grateful for. So later.com was one of those apps that we were able to use to schedule Instagram posts in advance, so that even though you didn't know what day of the week it was or what time it was, your post was going to go at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. So we started relying on some of those. Later.com, we had to learn Facebook publishing tools was like another thing we had to learn. And all of this together, made it possible for us to look organized. Mm-hmm. And consistent, yeah. So additional to that, of course, with the quick pivot, our team started feeling the fatigue. We were second guessing ourselves. We definitely had the thought, like, does this even matter? Is anybody even caring? Did anybody even see that post that I spent 6 hours putting together? So what we started doing is talking about theme weeks. It actually, I think it kind of started with Earth Week. This was all happening right around when Earth Week was, the National Earth Week was being switched to an online program or an online celebration. And so we decided to hop onto that, and we didn't have to come up with a whole lot. We really were just using their guidance and their format and started producing our content to kind of match up with that. So we kind of had a little bit easier of a time on that Earth Week. And then we led into other fun weeks. The Camp at Home Week was really great for our staff. I remember it as a morale booster. We were not loving life that month, and all of a sudden Camp at Home Week, and everyone was like, oh my God, I love camping. So we had staff members setting up tents in their backyards to take photos. Everyone was contributing content based on their interests. So we had someone who really liked making s'mores and someone else who was really into map and compass. And so we kind of put together that theme week, and I'm pretty sure the audience saw our enthusiasm increase because our numbers went up. All of a sudden, when we hit a theme week, we had more engagement, more comments, more shares. So we saw an immediate bump in engagement when we shifted our content. So we'd have 3 weeks of our regular trail spotlights or our mindfulness Monday, and then we would insert that theme week and we would see a change in engagement. So here are some of the theme weeks. So we did the camp at home, we did a volunteer week, and then we hopped onto the National Pollinator Week, and we also saw a nice little boost in our numbers online. And so, I'm sure everyone can relate to not totally understanding the analytics of some of those, but we are all pretty clear on what likes and follows are. And we did see an immediate increase in our likes and our follows when we shifted our content from regular to theme weeks. So we recommend kind of maybe finding those theme weeks within your own programs that already exist. Perhaps there's an event every year that you already host. Maybe there's already a pollinator month that your organization participates in, and we recommend focusing and breaking up your daily posts with that. Our staff appreciated it. Our audience clearly was into it. And a lot of it, like I said, it was stuff that we already had. We already had some camping programs. We already had pollinator programs. We just kind of retooled it and made it a little bit more fun for those weeks. Aaron, were those weeks fun for you?
Yeah, they were fun. Almendra was spot on. We would do our daily post every week, and then after a while you'd get a little fatigued of it. And so we would jump on to like national weeks like Pollinator Week, and that was really kind of a little bit of a break for us because so many other organizations were also doing Pollinator Week things that it like helped us feel like we were part of a broader message. So, if you're saying, wow, they have a team of 11, like we only have a team of 1, like I can't create content every day, I would encourage you to look for things like that in the community. REI did a Recreate Responsible campaign that was before Memorial Day. And then Desert National Wildlife Refuge, they did, I think it was like their happy birthday. It was like their 84th birthday or whatnot. So for those days, like everybody in the conservation field was sharing the same messages. And that was really fun to be part of that. And it was great to see everybody have the same content. And then like for REI, they sent out like a media template and we were able to just share the things that they had already created. So if you're feeling like, oh, I don't have time to do too many of these different things, look for something that's coming up that's a broader thing that you can be a part of. The last thing that we kind of learned and took from this is to kind of refocus what we're doing on equity and our audience. And so I mentioned at the beginning that most of the programs we do are for youth, and they're for underserved youth as defined by the school district. And so we were really good at giving in-person programs to all sorts of kids and groups that wouldn't have had that opportunity on their own. But when we started to move most of our stuff online, we didn't really think through at the beginning, like, who is this going out to? I just said, well, I like mindfulness, so I'm going to make some mindfulness stuff and put it out there. And so we were making all this content, but we were still growing into, who that content went to. And if you look at our organization, most of us are middle-aged in the organization. I think out of the 11 people in our group, there's 2 men and 9 women. And so we got a little bit more familiar with the analytics of social media, and we realized that most of the things that we were putting out were being received or liked or clicked on or whatever by middle-aged women. And, you know, that's not who we were doing our programs for. So most of who we were doing our in-person programs for were children of color or children in Title I schools. And so, you know, the audience for our online stuff was different than the audience that we had in real life. And so once we realized that, we began to shift what we were doing to try to be more conscious about our audience. And at the same time that that happened, you know, you had the death of George Floyd and all the resulting unrest and protests in the country, and calls for equity and equality. And so it just seemed like a big call for us to focus strongly on who our social media was reaching. And so I don't want to pretend that we know, like, that we're experts in how to do this. I don't want to pretend also that I'm the best spokesperson for teaching anyone how to do this, but we're trying. And so a couple things that we have done that have been successful for us is just a small part of the conversation, but we've started to use a lot more hashtags. So we didn't use very many hashtags, or we maybe only used 1 or 2 hashtags at the beginning of doing this. But now for each of our social media efforts, we have defined who is the audience for this, and then we've defined hashtags that are appropriate to that audience. So for my Monday morning mindfulness program, there are all sorts of hashtags related to mindfulness and mental health. And, you know, that has done a better job of helping us, or this program, reach people that want to use nature, or people that have anxiety, or, you know, as a lot of people that are just, you know, having some hard mental health days as a result of all of this. We also started to pay attention to diversity in our content. And this was something that we were real conscious of. And we did one of our earlier campaigns, and we used like clip art for all of the campaigns. And then after we had put the whole campaign together and looked at it, we realized that all the clip art was of white people. So if you just, you know, Google clip art for kids camping, a lot of the people that came up was white. And so when we put that together, we realized that that was not reaching the audience that we wanted it to reach. And so we had to be conscious and take efforts as a community to not let like sort of that bias continue through our program. So we've been really conscious as we've done this about having a wide range of people represented in the content that we put out. And that's in pictures and voices and biographies, as you can see in some of the pictures below. And it's something we didn't have to worry about when we did in-person programs, because we would see all different types of audiences. But now that we're doing online things, we have to be more conscious of it. And we tried to amplify diverse voices. Get Outdoors Nevada does not have a huge voice platform. We maybe have 3,000 or 4,000 followers, but we do have a platform. And so we started to use that to give people who we thought were doing amazing things a voice. So we learned a lot of different things. Some of the things that we are going to take with us, we have all our wonderful pictures of our team here on Zoom. Since this has started, we have done a lot more checking in with our staff than we did before. I feel like I am like listening to Elmendra and her dogs almost every day now. We seem to get together to talk about our lunch or whatnot. So we have transitioned to having twice a week meetings with everybody on the staff, and this is a video call. And so these are some of the pictures from the video calls. And we used to do staff meetings before, but we never did anything on this regular of a basis. And At the beginning, it was just, to me, almost like, oh man, there's like another face. Like I've seen another person. Like I haven't been out of my house in 2 weeks. Like there's my people, and I feel like we've kind of got past that a little bit, but it's still really nice to see everybody and check in with everybody and stay on the same page. And we use Google Drive and Google products for a lot of things, and it's been really nice for us. And I recommend that you do that also. And so we have it's called here a check-in items. And so whatever we want to check in about during our meetings, we just put on that list, and we get together, we go through all those things. When something is done, we delete it off the list. So it's kind of like a live running list of everything that we're working on, and that has worked really well for us. And it's been really refreshing for me to see everyone and to just talk more with everybody that's on the team.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, Aaron, that I think that this is something that we're definitely going to stick with, because it has this exchange of ideas more regularly between all of the departments, between the managers, directors, even the part-time staff. That exchange of ideas has I think been really instrumental to our success as a team, and the content that we're producing is very diverse. It's reaching different audiences, it's creative, and I really attribute that to those regular meetings and check-ins, because for a lot of people, this could have stifled that creativity. It could have shut down a lot of the nonprofit idea workspace. But for us, if you're having a rough day and you can't see yourself the other side of an idea, we have over and over again during this time kind of motivated and helped each other to get this stuff together. And I do think that's important to our pivot story, is that those check-ins have helped us push through. It really has helped us push through.
Yeah, just yesterday we had all our some good ideas, didn't we? We had
I always have the best ideas. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, carry on.
The other thing, the next thing that we'll take away from this experience is an increase in virtual programming. We have started out with Zoom, which we are on right now. Zoom, for the most part, is free. You can also pay for an upgraded version of Zoom that's maybe $150 a year, which is, I think, probably the one that we're using now. And so we don't really know what the fall will look like. We are trying to be prepared to do in-person things, but then we also want to have some backup plans, so like a plan A, B, and C. And so we have taken some of our more easily adaptable programs, and we have got them ready to do over Zoom. So for instance, we host the Mojave Max program. Donovan, who's in the top there, I pointed him out to you before. He does a lot of the Mojave Max programs. And so we've practiced in the spring and over the summer with connecting to a teacher over Zoom. We may add Google Classrooms also. And then Mojave Max is a Desert Tortoise program. So it works really well for virtual content because you can show off specimens and the kids get to ask questions. So we have that kind of ready to go. I would encourage you to think about doing something like that for your organization if you're wondering how you're going to meet kids. I know that a lot of the school districts are like trying to figure out what's going on. They're not sure how things are going to work. I'm sure that many teachers in school districts would love to have an organization that has cool content, like ready to go, that the teacher can call up in a moment of stress. We've also done some webinars and things like what we're doing today. We did one for Friends of Nevada Wilderness that we have here. And then we've also done some teacher trainings. So we do maybe 6 or 10 teacher trainings a year. And then we started to do those virtually. And there was a little bit of a learning curve, but the last one we did virtually, we got people from all over the state. And then, you know, we're in Las Vegas, we got people from Arizona that joined the teacher training too. So there was people that were interested in what we were learning or teaching about, but they would never be able to attend in person. And so then if we offer a virtual thing, like, our audience expanded really well. And, you know, to us, that seems like a logical thing to continue on. Nevada has a lot of rural areas. And so if we can offer teacher trainings to rural areas and those teachers can join where they wouldn't have otherwise been able to, like, that seems like it makes a lot of sense to us. And then a lot of this content that we've been making for social media and things, and all these videos and things, we are getting those ready to use as digital content in the fall. So a couple of my colleagues, Shelly and Teresa and Rosalind, they have a wonderful Next Generation Science Standards program. They're using this time to make videos and content about different places so that if we can't go in person in the fall, they'll have worksheets, videos, things like that, that they can use digitally to help share our content. So those are all things that you can, you know, I got a new phone, and the camera and the video on the phone is, you know, I can just use that, and it's like really refreshing and easy to be able to like start to do some of these things.
Aaron, right before you move on, Diane had a quick question. What were you teaching the teachers? She's a full-time middle school math teacher, and what content, I guess, was being shared with them?
Most of the content that we teach to the teachers is water conservation content. That's a big thing here. So we provide like overview of water conservation, and then depending upon the audience, we'll give them activities related to water conservation that the teachers can do in their classrooms.
And while you're on that topic, only to jump in as another educator, when you're doing that sort of sharing of topics, are you using NGSS standards, or is there a standardized format that you're using so that it's topics that are and age appropriate information that's can be spread across different school districts or states?
Most of the stuff that we do for the school district is tied to Next Generation Science Standards. Yes, not all of it is. We have some informal programs that are like for summer camps and things, but most of the stuff that we do in school is tied to the Next Generation Science Standards to make it easier for the teachers to use. So the activities that we use for our teacher trainings are tied to school standards, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
So continuing with like the things that we're going to keep doing differently, and those realizations about, you know, increasing our audience. We had a meeting one week, one of our check-ins, and I was feeling pretty down on the idea that we would ever see people again. I'm sure you guys can relate. Like, we're never going to see volunteers again. And I made this comment, like, you know, what are they going to do? You know, like write letters to park people. Like, it was like some sarcastic comment that I made. And then my team members jumped in and they're like, actually, that's a really good idea. You should go with that. And so we developed from this sarcastic comment, a virtual volunteer opportunity that took off. It was so great to see how we connected with a group that we hadn't really thought about. And that was a big takeaway for us, is that, you know, previously a volunteer could connect with us, maybe occasionally online, but really it was, you had to come to a trail and you had to come pick up trash with us. And with this virtual volunteer opportunity, we were able to engage with a different group of volunteers, the volunteers that were missing us as well. And there was this letter writing campaign, and we also shifted. Originally the idea was to write letters to local Parks and Rec staff and public land employees. And then there was a local fire in our Spring Mountains, and we shifted this idea to write thank yous to the fire crews, and even, you know, got a larger response. And it really brought home to me the idea that that the need to expand and consider different audiences is very real. And you know, we were missing so much the way we used to do things before March that I really hadn't spent much time thinking about, well, you know, what does it look like going forward? Sure, we're going to have some virtual content because we have to, but also like, what are we going to keep? And I know this virtual volunteer opportunity is something that we're going to keep going forward and kind of adapt to for new ways to engage that audience that can't show up in person. That was a big takeaway for us. And, you know, some of the other programs that we adapted for that kind of concept too was that in the summer camps, we would share our programs with the kiddos at the rec centers. And yes, right now we can't see them. So we created the Nevada Nature Project Box, which is kind of like a summer camp in a box that we're going to give out during, you know, this time that they can't go to camp. But then the conversations with our team are, well, what if we always did that? What if we always had an option for those kids that maybe couldn't even go to that camp next year? And you know, what are other ways that we can engage with those different audiences from here on out? That's very much part of our weekly conversations. So it's been nice to expand on that idea. The volunteer program also created some trail spotlight videos, and that those videos are available on YouTube. We have a playlist on our YouTube channel, and those trail spotlights are our staff members filming the trail walk. And we'd never done anything like that, and we got a really great response from community members. We had a teacher write in that she was really excited to share them with her special ed class. As the weather shifted and it's been 115 in Las Vegas, people can still explore their outside spaces through those videos. And so again, that was that virtual audience that maybe can't drive to that trail and can't participate that week, but we have engaged them, and we have that program on our YouTube to share with that audience.
You got, how many letters did you get to the firefighters?
A lot, just a lot. It was great.
It worked really well.
Yeah, it did. I know. And I was super sarcastic about it in the beginning. So I'm like, yeah, you guys are awesome, because, you know, that's the team check-in thing, is that, you know, it worked and it was really popular, and we've gotten a lot of shares on it. I think what's neat to follow is when someone shares that, they usually say, hey, here's a really good idea, or I'm really excited to share this. And it's that pat on the back that as a team, I know I need it sometimes to know, like, that the time I put into creating that graphic or to thinking out that idea, I don't always know if it's working. And so when you do get some sort of feedback that it's working, it feels really good. It feels really, really good.
The next thing that we're gonna take away from the experience is we added an online resources section to our website. So it's like a portal. And so, you know, we had all these previous materials. We took a lot of them and we adapted them to social media. And, you know, for weeks and weeks, we put them out there. And instead of just, you know, letting some worksheet go to the back of your page in social media and then, you know, after a month or two, never see it or think about it again, we collected all those things that we made for social media and we put them in groups on our website. So it was like the effort we invested into social media was not just for social media. It was also so that, you know, those videos, those worksheets, those quizzes, we could use all that stuff again in maybe in an in-person program or a summer camp. So, you know, we did some map stuff on social media, and then that will go into like a map section on our website. We did our Camping 101 stuff, which we talked about on the website, or which we talked about previously. And then all the posts we did for Camping 101 go into this little middle blue section here. And I think altogether it was like a couple videos and maybe 20 or 25 worksheets, you know, and so that has a home now. One of our aha moments from yesterday was related to Pinterest. And so, you know, if you are saying like, oh man, like, I don't know anything about websites, like, I don't have a web developer, like, I don't know if I have the energy or time to make like an online resources portal. Well, you could take all the posts that you develop for social media and you could put it on a Pinterest page for your organization. And then, you know, instead of having Camping 101 like on a website, you could have Camping 101 with all your pictures and your worksheets on a Pinterest page. And that's something that is easy to do and that anybody can really do. we hope that will allow like our content and the effort that we have put into this time to continue to live on into the future. The last slide we have, and the last thing that we really have taken from this time as an organization is a commitment to diversity and equity in our programming and in our efforts. We did it pretty consciously when we could see people in person because we could go to places, but now that we can't do that and people have to come to us, we've really, as a team, embraced and become committed to making sure that when people come to us, they see something that is welcoming to their organization. And so we've done that kind of internally. We're working on a diversity, equity, and inclusion, some statements for our organization that will go on our website. We recently added pronouns to our emails, that view that as a welcoming thing. We are working with some groups to update our website and some of our materials so that they're welcoming for diverse audiences that may come upon them. And we are also improving our recruitment practices so that we make sure that we recruit diverse staff members. And in that line, here's our job announcement. So we have a position opening right now that it's still open. I think it's open until tomorrow. So if you know anyone that is looking for a part-time job that shares the same values as our organization, we would love to have diverse applicants join our education team and become a part of what we are doing. Elmendra, can you add, is there anything that you'd like to add on to what I've said?
Just to, again, reiterate with the diversity and equity, that as an organization, those regular meetings have been, again, like instrumental in those conversations, having many people chiming in and talking about not only from the outside looking in, how they see us, how we're received, but also internally, making sure that our own team members have an opportunity to express how they're feeling or how a program is or an activity. And I think all of that input, we've allowed ourselves to be open to it and welcoming, and we're critical of it all. And we're sometimes overwhelmed by the conversations. Actually, we're always overwhelmed by the conversations, but we're having them. And I think that I just wanted to add that to the diversity and equity slide, is that we're having a lot of conversations, and there's some cool things coming from that, and the checking in with each other. And that's what's been really neat too, is there's so much time for talking right now. There's a lot of talking. Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right, that's the last slide.
So as an organization, I'm really proud of the things that my team has done, and Elmendra, I'm sure that you're proud of the things that all your team has done.
Yeah.
Growing, whenever you're growing, it can be a little awkward and painful, but that means you're growing, so we have not always known what we are, where we're going, but we've been open to whatever has happened, and I think we've produced some really wonderful things out of it. So I hope that some of the suggestions that we have shown today to you may be helpful for some of the programs that you are doing also. I'll turn it back over to Andres now. If there's any questions or any other things that you'd want to talk to, I'm sure that Elmendra and myself would be happy to discuss anything with you.
All right, thank you both so much. We're coming up towards the end of the hour, so I want to be respectful of folks' time if they have to log off. But again, thank you so much for sharing your journey and how you've pivoted. I think this is something that we're all currently dealing with. And like I started, our goal is to come out of this stronger and with more tools at our disposal to keep doing this great work. And I think a couple takeaways that I'm pulling from your presentation before I open it up for some questions here is, I think one thing I picked up on is like a willingness to be open to new ideas, tossing out ideas that may have this time last year seemed a little outlandish, actually are spot on for what we need. And being okay with sharing those ideas and realizing that 8 times out of 10, the idea might not go somewhere, but those 2 times are gold, and you're going to be glad you did that. And the second part that I'm pulling out of this is that a lot of the work that you pushed out during this time and are continuing to do isn't necessarily groundbreaking new stuff for you. It's stuff you've already been doing that's been repackaged. And I think if we really look at what are we doing well and how have we always served our communities, how do you repackage that and take it from a tabling event to an online platform? I think we're all successful because we speak to our community in the way that our community needs us. So take those things we're doing well and rethink them just a little bit. Be open to a little bit of change, and all of a sudden we're going to come out of this with a lot of new tools. I recognize that a lot of groups on this call are probably a little bit smaller than y'all. So I do appreciate you sharing some of those resources like Canva that are free for nonprofits, or that template, things that are very easy to do at a very low cost. And the more we can stay organized and at a small budget sometimes, I think we can continue to do the amazing work we've always been doing. I have a question here from Sam, and it's a question I'm happy to reach out to you, Sam, directly as well. Do you have any guidance, suggestions yet for hiring practices that promote diversity and inclusion? I'd love some resources that can help us reduce bias in our search. I will personally include the Avarna Group's hiring toolkit, which is something that we've used with some very simple and very tangible steps laid out to help us mitigate our bias as we're thinking about who we want to bring into our organizations and how we can make it the most welcoming and inclusive environment possible. So I'll share some specific resources. This could be a whole new webinar, so I don't want to dive too much into it, but Almendra, Aaron, I saw you giving thumbs up. Is there any other resource that you would recommend?
Yeah, we did use the Avarna Group suggestions for some of the interview questions. We met as a group to kind of go over some of those suggestions and retool the interview questions. And we also recently joined Camber. And so they have some resources online as well, so that we can do a little bit more research too and change some things.
Yeah, Camber Outdoors is doing some really good work.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, if I don't see any more questions here or hands raised, again, thank you both so much for joining us, sharing your journey. I'm going to include your emails in the follow-up. However, Jane raised her hand for a last-minute question. So, Jane, you should be unmuted if you wanted to ask your question out loud. You might have to unmute yourself from your end, Jane.
Okay. Now,
there you go.
Okay. You know, you throw out some of these names and I don't understand them. So for instance, you said Avarna, A-V-A-R-N-A, question mark? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I will send out a follow-up with a link. The Avarna Group is a team that does a lot of work in the equity and inclusion world with nonprofits and outdoor organizations. So
good.
the Avarna Group is a resource that I'll definitely include.
Yeah, some of these resources, when you're speaking, is fine, but if you can see them printed out, it's helpful.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us on, Andreas, and everyone else who joined us. It's nice to share our story. You know, it's not over and we're still in the middle, and there's, you know, I'm sure in a couple months we could have a whole other 20 slides of new things that we've learned and new things that we've done, but it's still nice to share so far how we got through this part.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of everybody in the whole network, thank you so much for doing the great work you're doing, and yeah, keep having fun and stay cool in Las Vegas out there.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.